Okay, so week 4 of the Mountain Goes Red redemption study, we focused on grace today. And grace specifically understood in this Ephesians 1, 7 through 10, needs to be seen as being rich and lavish according to God's standard, which is so great. It's greater than sin. Wherever sin abounds, grace abounds that much more. So understanding that, one, God's grace is lavish or is wealthy, and then it gets lavished upon us. So it's important for us to receive this lavishing of God's grace. And the reason why is because when you see in Ephesians 1:8 right there, that grace which he lavished upon us in all wisdom and insight, making known to us the mystery of his will according to his purpose. So his grace lavishly applied upon us gives us an understanding of what his will is for our life. So grace isn't just something where it excuses us of a sin, or when we say something to people like, oh, I give you grace, brother, you're fine. It's actually greater than that. It's the ability, when it's given to us, applied to us generously, it gives us the insight to what God wants to do in our life. And when we begin to walk with God in that capacity, you have love, joy, peace, patience. It says of Jesus, he's the way, the truth, and the life. So these things begin to be unlocked in our life as we begin to receive God's grace. So you're going to have to confront the things that don't allow you to receive grace, or the other tools that you would lend to try and find God's will for your life rather than God's grace. My story is that I've tended to, like it talks about in 1 Corinthians, I've tended to try and access God's grace through my wisdom, as the Greeks would do. But some try and access an understanding of what God's will is for their life through seeking a sign. But scripturally, we see that it's important for us not to use these other tools to try and understand God's will for our life, but to receive God's grace generously applied. This unlocks God's will for our life and an understanding of it. And it's done insightfully, as it says, with wisdom and insight. So let's receive that grace in our life to be able to really walk with God in an understanding of what his will is for our life. Okay, so we're back week 4 talking about redemption, and today the focus is on grace. So this is my friend Chris.
What's up, guys?
Hey, buddy. And I actually love talking to Chris about a lot of things. Business, God, very, very insightful, very fun, part of the mountain community.
Baths.
So I gave you a huge heads up to be a part of this podcast. And so he studied a whole lot. And so we're going to have a conversation about a little bit about what we preached about today, but this Ephesians 1, 7 through 10, talking about God's grace generously applied. Have you, or would you consider yourself a person that's like very gracious naturally? I'm curious about where you started before you really started to interact with God.
Sorry, I thought there was going to be like another part to that
No.
question. You're like, just grit.
No,
Like, no,
just
that one.
simple and profound.
Love it. I love it. The first thought that comes to mind when you're asking that is it's way easier for me to be gracious towards others. In fact, my wife, Beth, has deemed me the benefit of the doubt guy.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's
Generous
like,
assumption.
There's probably like this
Yeah.
going on. Yeah, like you never know what's going. Like get just a lot of grace going.
Does that madden her?
It drives her crazy. Yeah, it drives her crazy. And she's like, "No, he was wrong. You should do it this way."
That's right. That's right.
But when it comes, like I think today, parts that hit me personally harder was that when it comes to receiving the grace myself, that one not so much. Yeah.
Why?
I mean, other conversations that we've had, it's through, sport, competition, performance, quota, just that pressure to rely on self, to show up, to get it done. If it doesn't happen, it's your fault. Yeah. If you win, it's because the team or everyone else did great. It's that type of leader. And there's parts of that are good. There's great qualities there. Yeah. But when it comes to building a skill, or even just the surrender or vulnerability to receive grace freely, it becomes a lot more difficult.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it easily becomes very difficult to understand, okay, am I supposed to just do this because I can for God? Or am I supposed to ask him about it? Or should I wait for something there? And I've found where I've been at recently that God created something in you and developed something.
Yeah.
And so that thing he starts to do, he created endurance in you. So you just begin to act in what he created. He creates wisdom in you. And so you begin to act in it.
Yeah.
And what I found recently is at some point, I just have been acting and doing what he already did.
Yeah.
And there became this disconnect between, okay, well, now what else? Like, am I still connected to God's grace? Am I still connected to a reliance upon God? And I think in my own personal evaluation, my conclusion has been, I am not. That I've grown more self-reliant than God-reliant.
Yeah.
And that's a really weird concept for me.
That makes two of us.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we're not alone on that.
So let's give people advice on it.
Yeah. So as experts on this topic,
Yeah.
we need to. There's a couple more points here that I think are like worth covering. Like as a husband, as a father, as a leader in business and employees. There's just people that have been brought into my life and me and theirs. I'm tired, Sam. Like I'm. And you've got 4. I only got 3 kids. Like I'm a cakewalk over here.
I'm 25% more tired.
Exactly. No, but there's oftentimes one of my business partners. He's like, it's not a righteous thing. Like they know that I follow Christ and that I'm like pursuing that. And they're like, oh, the actual phrase he uses is so weird. He says, you're the moral pillar of righteousness. I was like, what does that even mean? It's like, it's so uncomfortable every time. But you can tell that there's like something being done there and they're seeing something. Yeah. And that's how he knows how to communicate it. And it's not me righteously in my own like strength pursuing. It's for me, it's more survival. Here's what I mean. In marriage, in building a family and building business and teams and all the things, I need a love that is greater than just my own. What I can create with my energy, my wisdom is obvious. Who am I? Like I'm just some dude. Yeah. It's very finite and I'm really bored with whatever outcome that's going. I can already roughly see what that's going to be. Yeah. But to accomplish something greater than yourself, it takes more than yourself. And that applies to all different types. Like you can't be married to yourself. You can't have a family only by yourself. But spiritually, like you're co-laboring with Holy Spirit and being a part of something that is greater than yourself. And so with that, like Jesus has all the resources, all resources that are available to us. We don't own anything, but we have access to everything. Yeah. And that part of what we're talking about this week, and you articulated well, was his grace. And the way that you access it is through just being willing, is through you receive it freely.
And that's something difficult, I think, to do when you have other tools in your hands. And that self-reliant wisdom thing has become one that I am keenly aware for my own life, that I have picked up as a tool to trying to access an understanding of what God's will is for my life. Yeah. So I look at the landscape, I look at all the problems, I look at the potential fruitful places and yielded places, and I go, okay, great. That's awesome. God gave me this intellect, so this must be him. Yeah. I'm realizing that these were the assumptions inside of me.
We're doing it right?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. God, we're good. Okay, thanks. And I realized this the other day somebody told me they prayed about something and God told them not to do it. And when they told me, I scoffed in my head because what they said God told them not to do to me was so just so basic. You should do it. Yeah. Yeah. It was such a basic business principle, such a basic investment one. To me, fundamental. Yeah. But it scared me because I realized, oh my goodness, I haven't even committed that kind of a thing to God.
Yeah, you're not surrendering that part.
Yeah. And maybe God didn't say that to him and whatever. So we can question all that. We can go down that road. But what I realized is I wasn't even asking God. I wasn't even like committing my ways like that to him. I just had somehow gotten to this pattern where like I love God. I'm doing God's work. I'm a pastor and all this kind of stuff. And I go, well, he'll just like do it through me. to some
Yeah.
capacity.
Yeah. Title, identity, role.
Yeah. Like Romans 12:2, be transformed by the renewal of your mind so you may prove what is the perfect and acceptable will of God.
Yeah.
So transformation, you do God's will. And to some degree, that's totally the case. Like God transforms you and you begin to behave like him.
Yeah.
But there's also scriptures that talk about committing your ways to the Lord.
Yeah.
And lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him. So there's this like conscious effort that we have to apply consistently to go, okay, I think I know. I think I understand, but I'm gonna yield this to you, God.
I think you're hitting on something really, really powerful to like take away. And that's ask. Like, okay, so I got to receive. So like his grace. How do you receive his grace?
Mm-hmm.
While there's not one answer to it,
Yeah.
one of the answers is spend time with him.
Yeah.
Like it's like 2 days ago, I had this like super weird, terrible dream.
Yeah.
And without all the details, it's just, when you get woken up at night and you're like, I'm just not going to like go back to sleep after that one.
Yeah.
And but on a spiritual like aspect, I was like, there's something, not like our household was good, but I'm like, spiritually there's something not right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got up and I went into, our closet, and I was just there. It was like a couple hours.
Yeah.
But it was quiet. And if you look at the life of Christ, like he had this pattern of retreating.
Yeah.
And so you spend hours with God and you can spend minutes with men. But when you spend hours with men and only minutes with God, something's very disconnected.
Yeah.
You're measuring once and cutting 17 times.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's there's something too, like you're saying, his grace that can operate and function well beyond our resources. The nature of his kingdom and his presence multiplies.
Yeah.
We bring the fish and the bread, but he multiplies it. It's not our role to feed all 5,000.
Right.
It's our role to show up.
Yeah.
And so I think there's like, how do you do that? How do you receive? It's like, well, I don't know, but like as the experts.
That's right.
Maybe start with.
That's right.
Maybe start with, spending. Well, Chris, I am spending that time. Cool. Is it the same thing every time? I like your example. Like, wait a minute, I wasn't even submitting that thought. Like, surrender all thoughts. Like, throughout my day, there's times that go through, I'm like, God, I know you know what I'm thinking right now. I know you know what just went through my head. I just want you to know I give that to you.
Yeah.
And it's just like learning that practice of literally surrendering. We gave our life to him.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we eat, what we eat, who we eat with.
Yeah.
That's how we, view sex.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we talk to our kids and ourselves.
Yeah.
It's so many more layers than I think most of it. I'm a good person, right? It's I do this, I do the right things, and then there's everything else. No, it is all things all of the time.
Yeah.
And that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. That scripture that, God gives grace to the humble and resists the proud. It's always kind of given me an understanding of what becomes the issue between God and I in terms of receiving a grace that he definitely wants to give generously.
Yeah.
And he wants to lavish upon me. And the issue simply becomes self-reliance.
Yeah.
Self-assured. And I would tell my wife on stuff, like, I'd be like, listen, I'm awesome. This is a real thing. I would tell her, listen,
I believe
awesome.
every word you're saying right now.
You know what? It's like, I would have told you at that time, like, well, is that bad? I'm like, well, God thinks I'm awesome. I just agree with him. Something like that, right?
Yeah.
And I think to a degree, that's good to understand and believe that you're amazing.
Yeah.
But there was also something in there that was like, I'm awesome. I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And the statement would be, I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah, right.
And then all of a sudden I hear my thoughts and I have a conversation with God, and I start to begin to understand that the thoughts are confessions of pride, self-reliance, self-confidence, self-assured. Most of them started with self. Most of them started with I'm. And there's this part of I was rewatching Avengers Infinity War. This is very spiritual.
Good choice.
Yeah, absolutely right. And he goes, he says this phrase right as he has something on Thanos' head, right? The Power Stone or Thor's head. And he says, I am. And they're hearkening to the I am of that Jesus said, and this whole idea that he had this God complex. But it was very interesting, right? So that I am going to figure it out. I'm amazing. I got this.
Yeah.
And I had taken on all this responsibility of being a hero and a champion in leadership. And because it was like, well, if I don't, who else is gonna, right? Like you look around and you go, well, maybe there's some and stuff, but like, I have to step in. I have to do something.
Yeah.
Because this is on me.
Yeah.
And you start to be very self-reliant in this.
Yeah. Versus, Lord, what are you doing right now?
Right.
What are you building?
Right.
And what role do you want me to step in to serve?
Yeah.
It's like almost the same. Like, I don't think it's one of your strengths is your confidence.
Right.
I think like genuinely, that's like a good quality.
Right.
Because we're a king's kid. Yeah. We're made in his likeness and image. Is that deficient? Is that bad? Is that poor? No. So I think there's a way to like sit in that space.
Right.
And like you were emphasizing that second part, flip. Like, I know this is partly why we're having a conversation, but it's like, it's for us and everyone listening, watching, what's powerful is just ask him. Yeah. Instead of going, I can, it's, Lord, what do you say?
Yeah.
I know, maybe I can, maybe I can't, but either way, Lord, what are you saying right now?
Yeah.
And what's my role in that? Mm-hmm. And, ooh, that's cool. Oh, I didn't even see. As this comes up, it's like maybe another way to differentiate the human element and the spiritual element is this notion of discipline versus surrender. Mm-hmm. Discipline is, I'm going to wake up at 4 a.m. I'm gonna that cold shower, you got nothing on me.
Yeah.
4 a.m. cold shower, cool. So you're 4 days in. That's great. You're 2 weeks in. Discipline gets you 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But it doesn't get you 5 years.
Yeah.
And it certainly doesn't get you eternity.
Yeah.
But surrender is a different energy and a different power that's not, at least to me, and kind of what we're talking about, as intuitive.
Yeah.
It's this, wait, hold on, let me get this straight. To do more, you want me to do less.
Right.
Yeah, actually like nothing. Like just get out of the way.
Yeah.
So hold on.
Hang on.
You're sitting and you're processing that. Yeah, exactly. Hold on. We're not talking about practice.
Yeah, that's good.
Different. Right.
Yeah, that's good.
To stay focused. Like on the surrender thing, it's like, no. It's honoring him. Yeah. It's giving credit where credit's due. Mm-hmm. And it's partnering with that and moving with that force. And that we're talking movies. Like an example of this, you're talking Avengers, very spiritual movie.
Oh, very, very.
Another one is Lord of the Rings. Chronicles of Narnia. Cool. One of my favorite scenes in there is when Aslan was, I forget the girl's name, but she's like looking for Aslan.
Yeah.
It's
Erica. No, it's not.
That would be great.
Yeah.
So Erica's running in the forest. Yeah. But like the powerful piece of it is that in that moment, all of her friends, everyone she knows, the world that she knows is completely crumbling. Yeah. Anyone listening, watching, like you feel stuck. Yeah. You feel like the walls are all coming, down on you. And we all have those moments. What's the first thing that Aslan does? He sits.
Yeah.
He does nothing. You can't. We do a lesson every time we're coming to service, and we were in Isaiah.
You guys do church on your way to church?
I pick out a verse and we do.
You are so much better than I am.
So we were having fun in Isaiah, and it's like his loving kindness is never shaken.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that in Aslan, and he sits. He listens like, why didn't you come to me sooner?
Yeah, never shaken. That's really true.
Why didn't you surrender sooner? Yeah. My grace was always here.
Yeah.
And once they reconnect and we honor who he is, and all that first, and he's like, okay, it's time to go. And he gets up and he's like, oh yeah, all them that we're battling, all of creation is mine. Yeah. The trees and the water. He didn't do anything. He spoke. Yeah. He roared. Yeah. And then all of creation came and took everything out, and it was done. I'm like, man, this guy. Like, man, it's like, if you go to war, like, that's like, dude, let's do war like that. Yeah. So those are some of those feelings of discipline versus surrender. Yeah. Our effort versus grace that's freely given.
Yeah. I tend to hate it when cliches are true. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But the cliche of, at the end of yourself, you'll find God.
Yeah.
Like that kind of concept is like at your limit, you really do learn to go, okay, God, I really need you. And while the cliche can be annoying and frustrating, there's this kind of real place of once you realize your end,
Yeah.
you have an incredible, amazing moment of humility to be able to really deepen your relationship with the Lord and receive grace in a profound way. And there's two different kinds of ways that this can go. Like I think a lot of people think about grace as it's something being applied to powerfully overcoming sin.
Yeah.
And I think that's appropriate.
Yeah.
You could see this, like, and I would encourage somebody where sin abounds, grace abounds that much more. Keep letting yourself receive God's grace.
Yeah.
Even if you go back to the well of sin, keep allowing yourself to return.
Yeah.
But the one that I think is not often referenced is this referencing receiving God's grace for mission, for building, for project.
Yeah.
And that energy, that favor, that's a bit of a different perspective, right? Because it's not like stumble, got to keep on trying to receive it. But it's like, oh my gosh, like I'm maxed out and I'm still not meeting all the needs of my business, of my family, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So that understanding of how to interact with God in a way that supplies.
It felt like, what's the place you're creating from?
Right.
And like a lot of achievement is really just built on insecurity and results and loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so much self. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, you got what you wanted.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, well, I didn't want what I want. Like, I don't know. We know what we want, but he knows what we need.
Yeah.
And so, like, it felt like today in the conversation that you were having and describing is, that's a place that you're wrestling through.
Mm-hmm.
And, as I'm listening to that, I'm like, whew, man, I'm obviously doing the same. Like, as our business is growing, you're not even gonna get to 10% of what's there, what you could do. I will die. I've act like in the company before this one, that I built and sold. My heart stopped beating properly. I had ulcers on my tongue. It's hard to eat and drink. Turns out you have to eat and sleep and like take
crazy.
Like I couldn't. It's just so it destroyed me.
Yeah.
Like but with grace and with God and the power of Holy Spirit and His presence, it shifts things.
Yeah.
And it's how we were designed. Like we weren't designed to do it alone and be separate or apart. So I think one other piece is worth mentioning. Going through this, it's like, oh, His grace, we're going to receive, and it's going to be great.
Yeah.
And the reality is, it is.
Yeah.
It is good.
Yeah.
He is a rewarder, and His loving kindness is never removed from us. We're talking about in Isaiah, and at the same time, when I heard you say that, it was last week. I had that moment where I'm like, okay, like I'm at the end of self. I'm done. And one of my biggest fears for leaning more into my relationship with God is I'm just scared. Because I'm scared that the more I surrender and I give to Him, the more He's going to take and hurt me. And I know that might sound weird, but there's the fear of failure and there's also the fear of success. He's given me vision for who, like, at least the next step of who He's called me to be.
Yeah.
And that version of me is not who I am today. And the gap between that is I'm scared of that.
Yeah.
I'm scared that it's going to demand way more of me. It's going to pull my marriage apart. It's going to make me a father that's more separated from my kids.
Yeah.
And so I wrestle with that, but I can't deny that because I know He's said what He's told me. And so, God, I trust You. At the end of the day, when my head hits the pillow, it's like, Chris, do you trust me?
Yeah.
Like, I do. And so in that moment, right after, I'm like, all right, those layers are coming off, and I say yes, and I lean in. Days later, more things start shifting and happening, and they hurt. Yeah. It hurts. And I'm like, you're going a certain path, a certain direction, And then you're like, yeah, everything's broken, nothing's going to work, and you need to completely rethink your life. Like those type of thoughts.
Yeah.
And I know I'm almost done. It's a longer story here, but like,
That's a good one.
there's something like that I'm in wrestling with that. I knew, I'm like, I asked for this. This is him working. It doesn't feel good, but he's good. And being patient and being able to like sit in that space for a little bit, that's part, I think, of receiving some of his grace.
Yeah.
It's even his grace that I'm able to be patient and continue to grow through that.
Yeah. Give me the strength to do what you've called me to do. Give me the capacity to do what you, it's really very, it feels codependent. It feels very weak as an athlete.
Yeah.
It's a horrible feeling. I hate it.
Yeah.
I know it's right to walk this. I know what God's doing in my life, and I've never been this afraid of things God's doing to me. I'm usually just like, this is awesome. This feels horrible, but yay. Now I'm like, this is awesome. This is very hard, very painful, and I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I'm still gonna.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like I'm going kicking and screaming. you know?
Yeah.
But there's something really beautiful and patient about God.
100%.
You know? When Jesus taught us how to pray, the first line was "Our Father," and that's something that I think is very helpful for me. It's like you begin these conversations of prayer with your Father.
Yeah.
That kind of, when we're talking about receiving God's grace, like think about it as a conversation with your Father, not your earthly one, because that has all kinds of mixed bag of emotions. There are no perfect fathers on earth.
Yeah.
But your heavenly Father, who's perfect, perfectly loving, perfectly wise. And so that imagination, that reception is a bit different. So you're talking to your Father who knows he knows your perversions.
Yeah.
He knows your brokenness.
Yeah.
He knows your weaknesses, your strengths, your arrogance, all these things. He knows your past, present, and future. So he still very much loves you.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with the perfect patient figure.
Yeah. There's, I'm sure others, feel like this at times where, you go in all your different roles in life. You wake up, you're making lunches or doing the thing, your morning routine. And then you're at work or out in the world, driving everyone around or pouring out, solving problems, taking calls, whatever the thing is. You come home, okay, clean up, do this, everywhere you go, everyone's pulling. They need something. Hey, can I have a minute? Can you do it? It's everything takes. My relationship with Christ, that Heavenly Father, is that one place. In the ups and downs, like early in life with girls, and then it's school, and it's sport, and it's business, and things come and go, but that one piece of life is the only area of life that is always given and given and given and given and given, and it never stops giving. There's not an end to the way that His Spirit and His presence and His peace not only gives but empowers and encourages. Like you said earlier, His grace allows you to see, like, nothing changes, but everything changes. You have a renewed mind and heart to where you see what was always been there, but you never saw there before. And so you understand how to start co-laboring and working and partnering with like more, and you feel more fulfilled. We know what we want, but He knows what we need. He loves us more than we know how to love ourselves. Which is, to me, is like the kind of zooming out. It's like this funny thing to me. It's like, oh God, but I don't want to. Like, no, I don't want to go to my room. And it's like this thing is like, you are so ridiculous right now. And then you get through it, and it's like, oh, you were right. This is amazing. It's just this weird. And it's just like, what is it like for God to just watch this 2-year-old? Like unravel and be like, oh my, I don't know. That's always funny to me.
My 9-year-old son says to me the other day, he's like, Dad, I did 130 push-ups today. Nice. He's like, I did 40 pull-ups. And it's like every day I come home and he's like, I did this. He's working, right? He's just like on the grind. He wants to be great. Physically amazing. And then he asked me this great question. He goes, because he was wondering, I think, where he got this from. And he goes, were you like this when you were a kid? I was like, bud, you have no idea. We are the same person. He's like, wow. He's like, so you became amazing and awesome and athletic too, huh? And I was like, yep, buddy, you have no idea, dude. Like, you have, absolutely, man. And it's just so interesting to see some of my stuff in my son, you know, and then interact with it in this different kind of capacity. You've experienced some things, you've experienced some humility and stuff. And so it's such a joyful thing to be able to partner with my son in it. And then I can imagine I have so much joy over that. I could imagine even God with me, you know?
Yeah.
And some of my son's like self-reliance, self-assurance stuff, I smile at, because I know the humility that comes in journeying with the Lord and journeying in life, but still in the same, you know, it's like, you don't look at it as like, oh no, I got to get that pride out of him. You know, it's not so rushed. It's not so fear-based. It's just like, oh, yeah, I remember that. That's cool. That's interesting.
Yeah, one step at a time.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's like this really cool development. So
yeah,
that's a really powerful conversation over grace. I was really enjoying it. I was like sitting there, you're like, great. Hey, sorry, the story's so long. I was like, this is a good story. I'm liking this story.
You can keep that one
going. But we do have to wrap up. But I thank you for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Seriously, this was a lot of fun. And so this is week 4. You guys could discuss in your groups, and or if you're not, you can discuss with friends and family and begin this narrative and conversation of accessing God's grace, which will reveal God's will in your life, and really going through that mental and emotional journey of being able to receive his grace in a really, really rich and lavish way. Love you guys.